Ahoy! Welcome to an adventure. It's weird because I've been out for 2 weeks, and so there wasn't a stream the last 2 weeks. It was a good break, but it's weird coming back and being like, what was I doing? But welcome, everybody, to Archival Adventures, the once-a-week show where I pull things from special collections and university archives, and we look at them and see what we can learn. I am, of course, Anthony Wright Day Hernandez, aka Brogan27, the Community Collections Archivist here at Virginia Tech. And yeah, welcome in. Hannah, thank you for the resubscription, and Puddleglum, thank you for the resubscription. I think I saw a Sayuri in the chat. Hello, hello. Hopefully everybody is doing well. We've been extremely humid and very wet. Like bouts of like just absolute pouring rain. Some of it has infiltrated into our space here in the center of the first floor of a 6-story building. So we have dehumidifiers running in the other room to try and deal with some of the leaking that happened. Finally, not smoky there. So, yeah. As far as I know, things should be good for today. Yesterday we had internet connection problems here on campus. And I don't think there's any current forecasting for severe weather, so power should hopefully be stable. Yes, Sayuri, I hope that the good weather comes this way. It's just been the atmosphere has just been heavy. Very humid and warm and yeah. Shadows, hello, thank you so much for the streak. Anyway, I'm not here to talk about weather today, although that's an interesting topic. I'm not sure what we have on that. I might have to look. Today, we're going to find out what books celebrities in the 1970s thought were good. It's a very specific topic, but as you'll know, I picked the topic based on the collection. And we have the Theda Gibson papers from 1976 that led to what we've got going on today. The Theda Gibson papers include the correspondence of Gibson, a librarian at the Wise County, Virginia Lonesome Pine Regional Public Library, to American celebrities and political figures. The collection contains photocopies of letters to Gibson answering her query about favorite books. Some of the celebrities include Alda, Melvin Belli, Jimmy Carter, Julia Child, Ann Landers, Norman Lear, Margaret Mead, Barbara Walters, O.J. Simpson, Cher, First Lady Mrs. Ford, and Lawrence Welk. And that is by far not all of them. So don't know much about Theda herself. She was a librarian, apparently was putting together some sort of program featuring books that celebrities recommended, or, well, we'll see. I think I have a copy of the actual, ask that was sent to them. But it seemed interesting, and there's actual, letters that were sent in response. And I pulled as many of the books as we had in our collection. There are quite a few that we don't have, but all of the ones that we do have I have. And so we can potentially, like, at least look at the book. I don't know all of these books. It seemed kind of fun. Hopefully some of you will know the books and can tell us about them. So it's just one folder full of letters. So, might as well start with the first one, right? So this one, we have the actual ask, and then a handwritten response on the same page below it, which is very convenient for the first letter. Okay, so this was sent to Mr. MacKinlay Kantor. Does anybody know who that is? This is supposed to be someone who is somewhat of a celebrity. MacKinlay Kantor. I actually have links for every single one of these people. I did a little bit of preparing for this because I was like, they're all celebrities. Who are they? All right. Born Benjamin MacKinlay Kantor, was an American journalist, novelist, and screenwriter. He wrote more than 30 novels set during the American Civil War. Received the Pulitzer Prize for fiction for his novel Andersonville. Wrote for some Pulp Fiction magazines. He's definitely not one that I'm significantly familiar with. Apparently he's wrote a lot on the Civil War. Wrote the screenplay for Gun Crazy, also known as Deadly is the Female, 1950, a film noir. Oh. Huh? Okay, that's contradictory. Somebody needs to clean up this article. However, in 1992, it was revealed that Dalton Trumbo had written the Gun Crazy screenplay. So why then did you leave the sentence above that says that Kantor wrote the screenplay, if you're immediately going to refute it? Interesting. Anywho. Not somebody I'm terribly familiar with, but I was looking to see it. I wanted to see if there was anything that jumped out at me. So far, nothing. Yeah, not so much. That's okay, though. Apparently, he was famous enough to receive the letter. Dear Mr. Kantor, to promote interest in reading, we are asking prominent Americans to give us the title of one or more good books they have read. The books need not be current. Both childhood and adult favorites are acceptable. We would also appreciate comments as to why the books are memorable. Would you be kind enough to respond? Your reply will be used for display purposes. So, yeah, she's putting together a display for the library that would feature these things. Gotta love a handwritten reply. And even in person, this is very difficult, like faint writing. Let's see here. Dear Miss Gibson, of course, you bring to mind immediately one of my favorites. Recollections of 13 Presidents by John S. Wise. when I was privileged to be whom I was privileged to be briefly acquainted with 40-odd years ago. He used to let us camp on his beach. Bless this memory. MacKinlay Kantor. It is, well, I don't think it's faded. I think it was just a pen that was not, the ink was not flowing from it very well. Because it doesn't look faded it just looks like it's barely on the page. Recollections of 13 Presidents. I actually have a copy of that. It was in our collection. So we can at least see the book. I know nothing about this book. I don't know if it's got much. Anyway, it's from Doubleday. Recollections of 13 Presidents. Looks like published in 1906. Got. Hold, please. This book is having some spine issues. Its back is a little iffy, so let's just give it some support. Oh. It's okay, book. My spine is also a little iffy. Yeah. Alright. Recollections of 13 Presidents by John S. Wise. Illustrated. (1906). Ah. Good, there's an introduction. Since the adoption of the Constitution of the United States in 1789, 26 individuals have been presidents in this country, of whom 25 were presidents of the United States and 1 of the Confederate States. Here they are: Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson, Van Buren, Harrison, Tyler, Polk, Taylor, Fillmore, Pierce, Buchanan, Lincoln, Johnson, Grant, Hayes, Garfield, Arthur, and Cleveland. Not as... Oh, and then Harrison, and McKinley, Roosevelt, and then, of course, Jefferson Davis. The statement made by any man that he has personally known one half of these statesmen is calculated to create the impression that he is old. Yet, before I was 55 years old, I had personal acquaintance with John Tyler, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan, Jefferson Davis, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses S. Grant, Rutherford B. Hayes, James A. Garfield, Chester A. Arthur, Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison, William McKinley, and Theodore Roosevelt. Believing that the following reminiscences and anecdotes of these men will prove interesting, they have been written with no ambitious purpose and perhaps originated in personal vanity. But, even if that be so, it is hoped that they will nevertheless prove entertaining to that large class which is always interested in the personalities of prominent men. The reader will catch glimpses of these great men quite different from their presentation by the ordinary historian or biographer, and may form some idea of how they looked and how they acted in everyday life, without seeing too much of their greatness or their plans of government. He will be quick to discern also the difference between the impressions made by the oldest upon a child and those made in latter years upon a man, still later upon a contemporary, and lastly by a president who is younger than the writer. Without more of introduction, let us proceed with the description after noting one single reflection. We often hear the term accident applied to men of great political prominence. There may be, and doubtless are, incidents of such accidents, but none of the men who have attained to the presidency of the United States, whether by election or succession, or to the presidency of the dead Confederacy, were either accidental or ordinary men. Every one of them has possessed individuality, strength of character, commanding personality, and dominating force, which stamped him as far and away above mediocrity, and so marked him as a leader. That to refer to him as an ordinary man elevated to his position by accident is grossly erroneous, or weakly invidious, for men do not attain positions of such importance by accident. Some great quality, whether of heroism or statesmanship or popularity or political management, leads to their preferment. No verse in poetry ever written expressed the truth more forcibly than the lines, "The heights by great men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upward in the night." Congratulations, Sayuri, on becoming a VIP for the stream. Enjoy your digital gemstone and the ability to control the pun points. So, yeah, apparently this is just the author's personal reminiscences about the 13 presidents he was personally acquainted with. That is a lot of presidents to be personally acquainted with. Okay. I mean, given who MacKinlay Kantor was, that seems like a book that fits with... It makes sense that he would recommend that one. Alright, let's see. Who do we have next? Next up is... Hang on. I must sort. Because I'm not certain what name that is. Oh, Barbara Mertz. We have Barbara Mertz. Anybody know who Barbara Mertz was? I don't. But I found an entry for her on Wikipedia. So, to the interwebs. Barbara Louise Mertz, known professionally as Elizabeth Peters and as Barbara Michaels, was an American author. In 1952, she received a PhD in Egyptology from the University of Chicago, best known for her mystery and suspense novels, including the Amelia Peabody book series. Authored 2 books on ancient Egypt. Under the name under the name Barbara Michaels, she wrote primarily gothic and supernatural thrillers. And her publisher chose to use a pseudonym because she'd already published nonfiction under her real name, and they didn't want to confuse the fiction with the academic work. And then they used a different pseudonym for her historical mystery series. For her mysteries. Huh. Got some awards. The Amelia Peabody series. I feel like I've heard of it, but I have never read any of them. Looks like they're all Egypt related. Vicky Bliss mysteries. Jacqueline Kirby. In this series, Jacqueline Kirby is a middle-aged librarian with a very large purse and a knack for solving mysteries. So, not surprising that some of these celebrities are going to be authors, given a librarian was selecting who to send this to. Cozy Mystery Series, yeah. Okay, so that was who was asked to share their book recommendations or books that had meant something to them. Dear Ms. Gibson, thank you for including me in your plan. I have been a compulsive reader ever since I could read at all, and I think the public library is one of the greatest institutions we have. The only problem is selecting only a few books out of the many I cherish. Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is surely one of the greatest fantasies ever written. I also admire All Quiet on the Western Front for its fine literary style and great compassion. I have read and reread everything by Dickens, Mark Twain, and Jane Austen, but I also enjoy science fiction, especially Andre Norton and Robert Heinlein. One of the books I've most enjoyed recently is All Creatures Great and Small. I'm fond of animals and think that this is a lovely, humorous, touching book. I could go on, but I won't. Hope this is some help. Sincerely, Barbara Mertz. Okay, so we've got Lord of the Rings, All Quiet on the Western Front, and All Creatures Great and Small specifically mentioned. There are others, but that's plenty, right? I don't know. I don't think we had a copy of All Quiet on the Western Front, which is bizarre. Of those three, the only one that we did have, at least in special collection, was The Lord of the Rings. And we have a very, very lovely copy of this. I love the cover on this. It's just pretty. Your local library used to have a great hardback loader trilogy, and it had maps you could pull out. So this is a really nicely done one. It's a collector's edition, according to this, from Houghton Mifflin, 1974. So that's why it looks all schmancy. Oh, the first thing in it is The Lord of the Rings. 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky, 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for mortal men doomed to die, 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie, 1 ring to rule them all, 1 ring to find them, 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie. Don't tell Pretty Witchery about it? I mean, honestly, I feel like she would like this. So this is apparently a second edition. And so there's the foreword. I'm not going to read it because it's pretty long. And then there's the prologue. So this is all 3 books bound in one. It's interesting that the sections and page numbers are in red, because they appear to be the only things in red, which is just interesting. Oh, do you want it pulled out maps? Be gentle, because I do not know the directions it's going to unfold. So, I can't really zoom out any further. My camera doesn't want to go any further. No, I could maybe go a little bit higher here. Anyway. You get the Northern Wastes, Forwardwaith, Eriador, Uh, Ravanian, Rune, Gondor, Rohan, Mordor, the Bay of Belfalas. Like, there are a lot of locations on here that are not really familiar ones that people necessarily know. Like, Minarath and Enedwaith, Aradwaith, Near Harad. I mean, we're all familiar with, like, Eriador, Rohan, Gondor, Mordor. But it's pretty cool. And this is just a very localized map. The world, of course, is much bigger. And if you want to know more about the much, much bigger world, there is always the Silmarillion. But yeah, a very nice copy of The Lord of the Rings to go with that letter. I mean, it wasn't specifically to go with that letter, but or as Pretty Witchery. Okay, next we have someone named Fletcher Knebel. I'm uncertain exactly how that name is pronounced. I don't know why I'm... Okay, I do, of course, have the page for us to learn who this person is. I love that these are celebrities, and a lot of them I have no clue who they are. American author of several popular works of political fiction. Well, let's see. Bibliography of... Hang on. That's what I wanted. 7 Days in May, Convention, Night of Camp David, The Zinzin Road, Dark Horse, Poker Game, The Bottom Line, Dave Silken Cares, Crossing in Berlin, Sabotage. I don't know any of these. But again, there's no need for me to know them. It's definitely not a genre that I would generally read, so not terribly surprising. He is the source of the quote, "Smoking is one of the leading causes of statistics." I don't know that I had ever heard that quote. Anywho, dear Miss Gibson, I've loved many books in my life and have found that I usually am most impressed by those books which happen to mesh with my own interests, passions, or work of the time. As with paintings or music, a book will often fit my mood of the moment, but sometimes fade in memory when my mood or mindset changes. Thus, the book that made the most dramatic impression on me was Look Homeward, Angel by Thomas Wolfe, published in the 30s. As a freshman in college, I read it all one afternoon and then through the night, finishing it the next morning. I was overwhelmed. Never had I read such writing, and never had I been so moved by a work of fiction. Years later, when I dipped into the book again, I was far less impressed. I was no longer in the space of Thomas Wolfe when he wrote the book. Our moods had merged once for a few golden hours, and that was enough. A book and I do not have to travel through eternity together. I'll settle for a pleasant journey of a few days or months. Recently, I've been most impressed by a gem of a book entitled Lives of a Cell by Dr. Lewis Thomas, a physician. Not only is this beautiful writing, but it contains a dozen sparkling new ideas about life and its meaning that set the reader's mind to churning. As a matter of fact, just writing this reminds me that some borrower failed to return my copy, so I'm going out and buy another one to reread it. Hey! Welcome in, Raiders! Hello! Whimsies, I hope that you had a good stream. Eric, it is lovely to see you. It's been 2 weeks and I don't remember how to respond to a raid. It's good to see you. I am Rogan27, aka Anthony Wright Hernandez. I am the Community Collections Archivist here at Virginia Tech, and this is Archival Adventures, where I pull something from the archives and we see what we can learn. This week, I have responses from celebrities to a request in the mid-1970s. A Virginia public librarian requested of celebrities that they provide one or more titles of books that were particularly meaningful to the celebrity. And then she was going to use it for a display in the library. And so we have those letters in response, and we're looking to see, what were these recommended books? So far, I have not encountered any, celebrities that we really knew who they were off the bat. There are some. But we've been exploring. Currently, this letter is from Fletcher Knebel, who was a writer of political fiction. And yeah, but welcome in everybody, and anybody who was here and was not already following 16-Bit Eric, I do encourage you to do so. I don't know how you found me, but yeah, you should drop a follow, because Eric has a wonderful community, and it's a great place to hang out. Yeah, Pretty Witchery. The last person, Barbara Metz, one of the books she recommended was The Lord of the Rings. And this is the copy we have in our library. It's a second edition, collector's edition. So, on all of the pages, the sections and page numbers are in red. And in the back there's a fold-out map. So it is a pretty one. Ooh, Saddlecliff, thank you so much for the follow. Tolkien drew it? I didn't know that. It's a nice map. Yeah, when I was pulling books and saw that we had this copy, I was like, Pretty Witchery's gonna like seeing that. Okay. I did not know that he did illustration. That's pretty cool. Okay, so the Fletcher Knebel recommended 2 books, one of which we had in our collection. Look Homeward, Angel by Thomas Wolfe. In special collections, we did not happen to have a copy of Lives of a Cell. Alright. Figure out where Look Homeward, Angel is at. Because I have a lot of books next to me. Some of them I know what they look like. This is not one. Okay, it's near Portnoy's Complaint. Alright. I know nothing of this book. It is written by Thomas Wolfe. Apparently it was meaningful to this author. Yes. We have a dust cover description, which is certainly helpful since I can't read the book on stream. It's much too long. But at least we can get some sort of sense from the item itself what it's about, rather than having to go and find it on the internet. Alright. Look Homeward, Angel was first published in 1929. In the 18 years of its life, This novel has achieved a permanent place in the literature of the world. This is a copy from 1947. When Sinclair Lewis said of Thomas Wolfe, "I don't see why he should not be one of the greatest world writers," he called Look Homeward, Angel a novel so deep and spacious that it deals with the whole of life. There are great novels that are little read, but Look Homeward, Angel is not one of them. It is a living book, not only reread, but still being discovered. While it has appeared in various editions, it has not, until now, been given the distinction of fine printing and superb illustrations that so important a novel deserves. Douglas Gorsline, the well-known artist, was a close friend of Thomas Wolfe. For this new, handsome edition, he's done more than 100 illustrations. Okay. But yeah, I don't know much. It didn't say much about what the book is generally about, which is, fine. It's a novel. You're supposed to read it. To the reader. This is a first book, and in it the author has written of experience which is now far and lost, but which was once part of the fabric of his life. If any reader therefore should say that the book is autobiographical, the writer has no answer for him. It seems to him that all serious work in fiction is autobiographical, that, for instance, a more autobiographical work than Gulliver's Travels cannot easily be imagined. This note, however, is addressed principally to those persons whom the writer may have known in the period covered by these pages. To these persons he would say what he believes they understand already, that this book was written in innocence and nakedness of spirit, and that the writer's main concern was to give fullness, life, and intensity to the actions and people in the book he was creating. Now that it is to be published, he would insist that this book is a fiction, and that he mediated no man's portrait here. But we are the sum of all the moments of our lives. All that is ours is in them. We cannot escape or conceal it. If the writer has used the clay of life to make his book, he has only used what all men must, what none can keep from using. Fiction is not fact, but fiction is fact, selected and understood. Fiction is fact arranged and charged with purpose. Dr. Johnson remarked that a man would turn over half a library to make a single book. In the same way, a novelist may turn over half the people in a town to make a single figure in his novel. This is not the whole method, but the writer believes it illustrates the whole method in a book that is written from a middle distance and is without rancor or bitter intention. Yeah, I don't know. If anybody is familiar with Thomas Wolfe and wants to comment, please do. I have so many more letters. There's always so much stuff. There's always too much stuff and not enough time. So I'm going to pull up the next. Let's see. Oh. I'm going to find one that maybe we know who the person is. Or at least I have a copy of the book. Darcy Gilpin. Let's see, this is M. Ross McDonald. I'm going for... We've looked at a couple of celebrities that most of us weren't familiar with. So I want to find... Hey, how about Betty Ford? That's somebody that most people would be familiar with. Dear Miss Gibson, thank you for writing to Mrs. Ford expressing the desire to learn the names of her favorite books. The First Lady has especially enjoyed Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. Cashel by Susan Hovach, I'm not sure, and has recently read Don't Quote Me by Winzola McClendon and Scotty Smith, and Upstairs at the White House by J.B. West. And then it's signed the Director of Correspondence for Mrs. Ford. Of those books, the only one we actually have a copy of is Gone with the Wind. I know I have it. I don't know where it's at on the shelf. Hang on. Oh, it's the next one after Call of the Wild. Aha! Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. And you can see this one, we have it tied shut. It's a dangerous book. No, it's tied close because the cover is coming off. But I could still open it and we can take a look at the copy that I have. Gone with the Wind by Margaret Mitchell. This one published in 1936. No, not a dangerous... No, it is a dangerous book. You know, I have never actually read this book. And I don't think I've ever actually seen the movie. I'm culturally aware of its existence, but I've never delved into it. I'm just going to read, like, the first two paragraphs on the first page, since there's no, like, introduction or description, etc. Scarlett O'Hara was not beautiful, but men seldom realized it when caught by her charm, as the Tarleton twins were. In her face were too sharply blended the delicate features of her mother, a coast aristocrat of French descent, and the heavy ones of her florid Irish father. But it was an arresting face, pointed of chin, square of jaw. Her eyes were pale green, without a touch of hazel, starred with bristly black lashes and slightly tilted at the ends. Above them, her thick black brows slanted upward, cutting a startling oblique line in her magnolia white skin, that skin so prized by southern women and so carefully guarded with bonnets, veils, and mittens against hot Georgia suns. Seated with Stuart and Brent Tarleton in the cool shade of the porch of Tara, her father's plantation, that bright April afternoon of 1861, she made a pretty picture. Her new green, flowered muslin dress spread its 12 yards of billowing material over her hoops and exactly matched the flat-heeled green Morocco slippers her father had recently brought her from Atlanta. The dress set off to perfection the 17-inch waist, the smallest in 3 counties, and the tightly fitting basque showed breasts well matured for her 16 years. But for all the modesty of her spreading skirts, the demureness of hair netted smoothly into a chignon, and the quietness of small white hands folded in her lap, her true self was poorly concealed. The green eyes in the carefully sweet face were turbulent, willful, lusty with life, distinctly at variance with her decorous demeanor. Her manners had been imposed upon her by her mother's gentle admonitions and the sterner discipline of her mammy. Her eyes were her own. This was a book that was read aloud to you, and then you watched the movie. Probably been 30 years since then, though. So that was the first 2 paragraphs. I'm going to stop there because we don't have time to read Gone with the Wind. It is a significantly lengthy work, but in no way would I have the time to read on stream. However, it is definitely one that is classic. that many people enjoy, and so not really a surprise that somebody mentioned it. In this case, Betty Ford, the First Lady Betty Ford. Sorry, I'm retying the string. I probably could have waited to do that, but anyway, I've tied the book back up so that it won't attack. Alright, let's see who's next. Melvin Belli. Melvin Belli. Oh, this is the one. I do not have a copy of this book. However, I want to read this one just because it's ridiculous. First, let me bring up info on the person so that we know who this person was. Melvin Moron Belli, it is Belli, was an American lawyer and writer known as the King of Torts, and by insurance companies as Melvin Bellicose. He had many celebrity clients, including Zsa Zsa Gabor, Errol Flynn, Chuck Berry, Muhammad Ali, the Rolling Stones, Jim Baker, and Tammy Faye Baker, Martha Mitchell, Maureen Connolly, He was also the attorney for Jack Ruby, who shot Lee Harvey Oswald. So he's a famous lawyer. And so his response, when asked, a 17-inch waist is so tiny, even if she were tight-lacing, she would have to be a petite person to start. Yeah. It's probably not healthy either. Okay, so first off, he addresses the response to Frida Gibson. The librarian's name is Theda Gibson, Theda. And the request was typed. Dear Ms. Gibson, thanks so very much for your gracious inquiry, May 17. The book I've been most interested in, and indeed which I wrote, is Belli, My Life on Trial. I've spent so much time writing this and reading the galleys that I haven't had much chance to do anything else, but William Morrow, the publisher, New York, which is bringing out this book late summer, says it's their best book of the year. I like it too. I hope this will answer your inquiry somewhat. Like, we do not have a copy of that book, nor do I think we should. I just needed to read this one because it's the most ridiculous one. His response was, how about the book I wrote? It's basically an ad. Peter DeVries. I'm gonna skip this one just because we don't have copies of any of those books. Okay, this person, Jesse Stuart. Once we and we'll be taking a break here in about 7 minutes, and once we come back from the break, I'm going to focus in on well-known names like Alan Alda, Cher, etc. But I like just kind of going through. Jesse Hilton Stewart was an American writer, school teacher, and school administrator who's known for his short stories, poetry, and novels, as well as non-fiction autobiographical works set in Central Appalachia. He was the Poet Laureate of Kentucky in 1954. Novels. Tree of Heaven. Taps for Private Tessie. I mean, none that I'm particularly going to be familiar with. But that's okay. Let's see what he says. May 23rd, 1976. Dear Theda Gibson, the first book of poetry to influence me was given to me by my English teacher, Mrs. R.E. Hatter. I think it's Hatter. Uncertain. When I was 12 at Green Up High School in 1922. The book, The Collected Poems of Robert Burns, these poems influenced my life. Also, in Green Up High School, I discovered Ralph Waldo Emerson's essays, also Thoreau's Walden Pond, also Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. Later in my life, especially in college, Leaves of Grass by Whitman, Resurrection by Tolstoy, Hunger by Houseman, and The Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. I like Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, too. It would take pages to name the great books I have read and loved. Sincerely, Jesse Stewart. Well, that's quite a few. Many of which we actually have copies of. Emerson's... No. Collected Poems of Robert Burns was the first one. Alright. This is the Collected Poems of Robert Burns. It's a lovely book. Oh, we've got a embossed bust. The Poems of Robert Burns. Ooh. This was printed in 1965 for members of the Limited Editions Club. We have a number of books made for the Limited Editions Club. Most of them are really pretty. Robert Burns was the eldest child of William Burns, a gardener and tenant farmer, and his wife Agnes Brown Burns. They were peasants. Yeah, I'm not going to read the entire thing, but so this is just a very nicely printed copy of Poems of Robert Burns. Apparently we have the monthly letter of the Limited Editions Club in here. This was copy 954. $1,500 copies have been made for the members of the club. It's been designed by these people. John Dreyfus and printed by Robert McElhose and Company Limited, the University Press, Glasgow. And it's signed by the person who did the engravings, Joan Hassel. It's pretty. But that's just one. That's just one of the books that this individual recommended aid. We've got Emerson's essays. We've got Walden Pond, which surprisingly I did not have, or did not locate a copy of in Special Collections, which I have no idea how we do not have that. Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn. Leaves of Grass. I think we had a copy of Leaves of Grass. Yes. I will find it. Anyway, we are, I'm going to go to the Be Right Back screen and let the obligatory advertisements play. So it's going to be about a 3-minute break, and then we'll come back and continue seeing what books people recommended. So see you soon. Hello and welcome back. The ads should be well done now. Let's see. Leaves of Grass. Resurrection by Tolstoy. I have. But this guy just mentioned so many books that we actually had copies of. Hunger by Hoseman. I don't think we had that one. Because it doesn't look familiar to me. Portrait of an Artist as a Young Man. The main library had that, but we didn't have it in Special Collections. Great Expectations. Believe that was a yes. Yes. It is right behind David Copperfield. Aha! Okay. This one letter has left me with a stack of books. So we already looked at Emerson. Right? Or was that... No, that was... Burns. Robert Burns. I know what we're doing. I am by... Like, I may have a library science degree. I am by no means any sort of expert in the classics, British or American. Essays of Ralph Waldo Emerson. I don't know if this is another of those limited edition ones. It is very nicely done. First and second series with wood engravings by Hans Alexander Müller. Peter Popper Press. Published 1968, this one. So I am not super familiar with, like, this, like, apparently Emerson's essays are well known. Not to me. But that's why you get recommendations. Because it's like, hey, maybe you should go and look at this. History. There is no great and no small to the soul that maketh all. And where it cometh, all things are, and it cometh everywhere. I am owner of the sphere, of the 7 stars and the solar year, of Caesar's hand and Plato's brain, of Lord Christ's heart and Shakespeare's strain. Huh. Okay. Touching on things like Plutarch. History, self-reliance, compensation, spiritual laws, love, friendship, prudence. I could have looked at the table of contents, but, you know, heroism, the oversoul, circles. Circles? There's a whole section on circles? Nature centers into balls and her proud ephemerals. Fast to surface and outside, scan the profile of the sphere. Knew that what they signified and new Genesis were here. It's a song by your favorite band called A Portrait of the Artist that you heard with Portrait of a Young Art. Yeah, Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Yeah, I may have to like explore the essays of Emerson because I'm unfamiliar with them and now I'm just intrigued. I don't know what the hype is all about, which is the point of hype, because then you try to learn what it was, what it's about, etc. Of course, we have Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. This is a box set of the two, illustrated by Norman Rockwell, and the box is coming apart, which is why it was tied. But let's see here. Those are known to be dangerous books. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. This is Heritage reprints. It's got glossy photos, or glossy pictures. A list of illustrations. This was published in 1936. This copy. I mean, these are pretty culturally familiar. Anybody who's familiar with American culture is familiar with Mark Twain for the most part. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them, but very, very nice copy. And then, of course, there's Huckleberry Finn. And this edition was 1940. Together, that leads me to believe that this is probably also 1940. It's just interesting to me that the copyright page says 1936. It's weird that the two would be boxed set with one in 1936 and one in 1940. I suppose it's possible. But yeah, a nice box set of the two. I do have another Mark Twain that is another interesting one. Woo! I did it backwards. This one I do need to retie because the box is definitely going to fall apart. And Da-da-da-da-da. Come on. Almost. Okay. Barcode back in. The other copy of Huckleberry Finn. There's a note inside here. Huh. Okay. It's just identifying it. So again, the illustration on the cover here. This is the same. It's Heritage Press. This one, it's also 1940. So this is another like special copy by the same people who published the box set, but this one is a larger format. I love what like half of them end up having these like little newsletters inside of them. We just leave them there. Let's see. Then he mentioned Leaves of Grass, which you can see the cover is embossed. It's textured. I don't know how well the texture will show up. There. It's all got this bumpy texture and then it's embossed. Oh. I started turning pages and I was like, no, it needs the foam. These elderly books, sometimes they just have spine problems. Leaves of Grass. Boston. Thayer and Eldridge. Year 85 of the States. 1860 to 61. Year 85 of the States? That is a bizarre way to write the date. So I've heard of this. I have no conception of what Leaves of Grass is at all. Like, is it poetry? Is it... It looks like it's poetry. Okay. Let's, I don't know if I've got much time. Proto-leaf. Yeah, it's too long for this stream, so I'm not gonna actually, like, read it, but it's an interesting, like, the actual copy of the book is pretty interesting. We have a number of books of this size that have the similar sorts of covers. It's not like a collector's edition really, but it is part of a like collection in like you would buy a bunch of them to like have a matching set. However, Tolstoy's Resurrection. This copy is a showpiece. Interestingly, this is a Tolstoy that I know absolutely nothing about. I didn't even know it existed. Oh, yep, this is the limited editions club again. They make some really pretty ones. Resurrection, a novel in 3 parts by Leo Tolstoy. The translation by Leo Weiner, revised and edited for this edition by F.D. Reeve, with an introduction by Ernest J. Simmons and illustrated with wood engravings by Fritz Eichenberg. The Limited Editions Club, New York, 1963. During the second half of 1899, the atmosphere of the Tolstoy household was tense over the mighty effort to complete Resurrection, which was then appearing serially in a magazine. Racing against time in the face of anguished telegrams from the editor for this week's copy, for the next week's copy, the 71-year-old author, deserting his family, shut himself up in his study for days on end, taking his meals at odd hours and refusing to see visitors. Always the exacting artist, he kept mangling successive sets of proofs, repeatedly rewriting whole sections, and hurrying off last-minute changes for an installment just about to go to press. Fresh manuscript chapters in his almost illegible handwriting were cleanly copied by members of the family and their guests. Duplicate sets of corrected proof had to be prepared for translators for foreign publication. Urgent cablegrams and letters from abroad offered huge sums for first publishing rights. Finally, on December 18, Tolstoy noted in his diary, completed Resurrection. Not good. Uncorrected. Hurried. But it is done. With, and I'm no longer interested. You gotta love a book where the author, in their personal notes, says it's not good. Like, I think most authors would be... I think most authors are overly critical of their own work. And I am not exempting myself from that in regards to things that I have written. But... the engravings are really gorgeous in this. So, yeah, a lovely... I did not know that this limited editions club thing existed. I don't know that it's still a thing. But they made some really gorgeous editions. I personally have some limited editions of some books. And yeah, they tend to be quite nice. Lastly, from that letter, we have Great Expectations, which is apparently printed here in 3 volumes. Again, one of the, like, classics, like everybody's aware of this thing. And yet, like many, I have never read it. It's mostly for me, like, the classics were never really my genre. I'm much more... If it was science related, like science fiction or science historical fiction or like that, I would be much more inclined to read. Most of these are just outside my genre preference, which is why I haven't really read a lot of them. You had to read it for AP English. For my AP English, what I chose to read was 6 Characters in Search of an Author by Luigi Pirandello. So, and also like To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and yeah, This is just not one that I did. Greek and Roman myths. Ooh. Ooh. Great Expectations by Charles Dickens. Look at this. It's a color illustration. The reason I'm excited about the fact that it's a color illustration, this was published in 1885. That many colors in an illustration was expensive. Alternately inscribed to Chauncey Hare Townsend. Just because this is one we all supposedly should have read, and that I think many of us have never read. I will read the opening lines. Great Expectations. Chapter 1. My father's family name being Pirip, and my Christian name Philip, my infant tongue could make of both names nothing longer or more explicit than Pip. So I called myself Pip, and came to be called Pip. Hi, Baston Cider. I give Pirip as my father's family name on the authority of his tombstone and my sister, Mrs. Joe Gargery, who married the blacksmith. As I never saw my father or my mother, and never saw any likeness of either of them, for their days were long before the days of photographs, my first fancies regarding what they were like were unreasonably derived from their tombstones. The shape of the letters on my father's gave me an odd idea that he was a square, stout, dark man with curly black hair. From the character and turn of the inscription, also Georgiana, wife of the above, I drew a childish conclusion that my mother was freckled and sickly. To 5 little stone lozenges, each about 1.5 feet long, which were arranged in a neat row beside their grave and were sacred to the memory of 5 little brothers of mine who gave up trying to get a living exceedingly early in that universal struggle, I am indebted for a belief I religiously entertained that they had all been born on their backs with their hands in their trouser pockets, and had never taken them out in this state of existence. Ours was the marsh country down by the river, within, as the river wound, 20 miles of the sea. My first most vivid and broad impression of the identity of things seems to me to have been gained on a memorable raw afternoon toward evening. At such time I found out for certain this bleak place, overgrown with nettles, was the churchyard, and that Philip Pirip, late of this parish, and also Georgiana, wife of the above, were dead and buried, and that Alexander, Bartholomew, Abraham, Tobias, and Roger, infant children of the aforesaid, were also dead and buried, and that the dark flat wilderness beyond the churchyard, intersected with dikes and mounds and gates, with scattered cattle feeding on it, was the marshes, and that the low leaden line beyond was the river, and that the distant savage lair from which the wind was rushing was the sea, and that the small bundle of shivers, growing afraid of it all and beginning to cry, was Pip. That's a very interesting, sort of cadence to how that was written. These are just the illustrations are gorgeous. I had no idea. Yeah. It's really 140-year-old printing. In 3 volumes. I don't know if Great Expectations is typically published in multiple volumes, but this is 3 volumes. I suppose it would be really, really thick otherwise. MDCCCLXI. So 1861 for volume 2. And yeah, volume 3 is also 1861. Yeah. According to the... Anyway, let's move on from this person's recommendations now that we've looked at them all. And I said I would find recommendations from someone a little bit more well-known in the modern day. So how about, let's see, we've got in the more well-known category, we have Alan Alda. We have Carol Burnett, although, yeah, I mean, we can look at it. We have Jimmy Carter, Oleg Cassini, Julia Child, Cher, Beverly Cleary, John Denver, Hugh Downs, Dr. Seuss, Louis L'Amour. If you want to see one of these in specific, throw it in the chat. Bob Newhart, Norman Rockwell, Gloria Steinem, Barbara Walters, Lawrence Welk, Tom Wolfe, Jean Shalit, or Shalit. Is that who I think it is? It is. I'm gonna see if I can find this one here. Let's see. Angie Dickinson. Oh, hey, look. The one that I picked was like the second one here. So I'm going to do this one, but then, yeah, I'll pull up Alan Alda and Dr. Seuss. So we have the request. Dear Mr. Shalit, how do you say his last name? I have no idea. Asking prominent Americans to give us the title of one or more good books. And the total response. Okay, if you're not... Before we... This is who this person is. American journalist, television personality, film and book critic, and author. Started working part-time on The Today Show in 1970. He was, I think, most notably known, at least during my lifetime, as a movie critic. And I'm trying to think. For some reason, I was thinking he had a counterpart in the critic bit, but maybe not. Anyway, he's somewhat fairly well known. Apparently, he died last month at the age of 100. I mean, I did not know that. His recommendation was A Child's History of the World by V.M. Hilliar. I do not have a copy of that book. And since that was the only recommendation, that's pretty much as far as we're going to get with that letter. So let's look for Alan Alda or Dr. Seuss. And I will bookmark Carol Burnett. So let me look at that. A little more. Robert Baker. Norman Rockwell. George Harrison. No. Yeah? Anyway. Helen McGinnis. Anya Seton Chase. Like, I know they're in here. Jean Dixon. Art Buchwald. Elma Otto. Oh, there it is. Sorry. This is the Dr. Seuss one. So they got a reply. It is not a satisfying reply, I will say. Dear Ms. Gibson, Dr. Seuss is away on an extended tour of Australia and New Zealand for his British publishers, and so I am writing to you in his behalf. I wondered if you might consider using one of the titles he has written as one of your memorable books, or even include the full spectrum of his creative contribution to the world of children's literature. As a wise librarian, pardon the pun, I am certain you are most acutely aware of the influence he has had in leading children to an interest in reading. In the hope that it will be useful to you, I am enclosing a biographical datasheet on Dr. Seuss, along with a photograph. Please let me know if there's anything else we might do to cooperate. So this was not, like, she didn't manage to reach him, and his editor responded instead. And unsurprisingly, his editor was like, use his works instead. So it's kind of disappointing. Yeah, intend your puns. Peter Spear. Beverly Cleary. Harry Bird. Yeah, it was not a great response. Ella Grasso, O.J. Simpson, Joe Archibald, Mills Godwin Jr., May Sarton, Jerome Weidman. So many names that I'm like, I don't know these people. A lot of them are authors. Hugh Downs. Who am I looking for? I've already forgotten. There was the Dr. Seuss, and there was the Alan Alda, and then Carol Burnett. Barbara Walters, whose name I cannot hear without hearing it as Bob does. From an animated movie made for the LA Olympics called Animal Olympics, and I watched it so much as a kid. Anyway, Ann Landers. But that was completely a digression that was unnecessary to share, but whatever. That movie was a thing. I know! I loved it so much. It was really one of my favorites. Scott Corbett. Lillian Packard. Come on, John Denver. Bob Newhart. Meyer Levin. Honestly, figuring out who this person was took me half a day to figure out that signature is Meyer Levin. Oleg Cassini, Patricia Morris. No, that's Edmund Brown. Julia Child. Margaret Mead. Irving Stone. I will find the Alan Alda one eventually. Ron Nessen. But now you're getting a list of the names. Billy Graham. Norman Lear. Anita Bryant. Alan Alda. Okay. Dear Miss Gibson, there are a few books over the years that have given me a lot of pleasure, not only because I enjoyed them at the time I read them, but because every once in a while they'll flash into my head and provide a little insight at the moment. Some of them are books that have some of the books that have stuck with me are the King Arthur legends, which I used to read myself to sleep with when I was about 12. Any and all Mark Twain, especially Life on the Mississippi, which has a section on the river and which has a section on the river and how pilots have to learn about how the river keeps changing, which is the best description I've ever heard of how you have to make adjustments to changes in your life. Letting Go by Philip Roth, which is about the most difficult moments in our life, when we say hello or goodbye to something, and Portnoy's Complaint, where we say hello to ourselves. Double Helix by James Watson, which shows that scientists are human enough to want to win the Nobel Prize, even if they have to cheat to do it. Sort of the book Richard Nixon might have written about Watergate if he'd had a sense of humor. Any and all of Shalom Aleichem, which my wife and I used to take great pleasure in reading aloud to each other. It's impossible to read about the foolish people from the village of Chelm without laughing. I also loved reading Willa Cather, Hemingway, the poetry of J.R.R. Manley, Hopkins, and Moby Dick. That might be J.R.R. Manley Hopkins. Anyway, the greatest Jaws of all time. Moby Dick, the greatest Jaws of all time. Thanks for asking. It was fun thinking back over some of these titles. Sincerely, Alan Alda. So, of his list, we had one in our collection. in special collections. Like, there are more in the main library collection. Actually, no, we had two. I was double checking because there was one that I thought we might have that I just wasn't sure if I remembered it or not. And we do. So, the ones we have are Letting Go by Philip Roth and Portnoy's Complaint. Which, if I'm not mistaken, these are like self-help books? I don't know, we'll find out. I'm not familiar with either of them. Well, no, I mean, this is by an author who has a National Book Award for fiction, so maybe not. I don't know. I know there's at least one or two that are like self-helpy things in that were in the list. Letting Go. Let's see what the description says. Frankly, I'm sick of other people's troubles. I'm really finding it difficult to keep up with what certain people want of me. So speaks Gabe Wallach, a charming, careful young man and the hero of this brilliant new novel. Okay, not self-help. This is a novel. Anyway, Letting Go is Philip Roth's first full-length work and easily justifies the expectation aroused after the publication of his first book, Goodbye Columbus, a work that won an array of prizes, culminating in the National Book Award for the most distinguished work of fiction in 1960. In Letting Go, Mr. Roth has brought his wit and insight to bear on a contemporary scene of love and responsibility. It is with the debts and sorrows of Gabe Wallach that we are primarily concerned, with his sporadic, backhanded, and finally desperate attempts to find a proper relationship between his own worldly good fortune and the misfortune of others. Gabe's behavior throughout the 4-year span of this novel can be described as a kind of frenetic contest between his sympathies and his instinct for for self-protection, an instinct to which we are all prey, but of which Gabe becomes a victim. The sometimes willing, sometimes involuntary partners in Gabe's struggle are 3. Martha Regenhart, a warm, spirited, tough-minded divorcee, with 2 children, Paul Hertz, an intense melancholy young faculty colleague, an intense melancholy, I parsed that wrong. Martha Regenhart, a warm-spirited, tough-minded divorcee with 2 children, Paul Hertz, an intense melancholy young faculty colleague of Gabe's at the University of Chicago, and Libby Hertz, Paul's bewitching, exasperated, and mercurial young wife. To each of these 3 people, Gabe is irresistibly drawn. A man of firm conscience but unsettled emotions, he is one who finds it difficult to resist an appeal. From the opening pages of the novel to the last, the reader follows Gabe through the comic and tragic events into which he is led in his effort to rescue others without drowning himself. Until the last moment, he fails to see the distinction between ephemeral attention to others' needs and the responsibility and commitment to their futures. Only at the end is he able to let go, to release himself from the irresponsibilities of a well-ordered existence, to plunge headlong into the confusion of human life. The novel is set principally in Chicago, where Gabe and Paul are instructors at the university, and in Iowa and New York City. The fabric of the novel, as Mr. Roth has woven it, is hilarious, compassionate, even wicked. His ear for dialogue is uncanny, and his characterizations are masterful. His portrait of Libby Hertz, for instance, is as definitive as those of Daisy Miller by Carol Kennicott. Above all, as readers of Goodbye Columbus can attest, Philip Roth is a skillful satirist of the American scene, and his aim, whether the target is the academic community or middle-class smugness, is deadly. It is for his powers of wit, observation, and understanding that Mr. Roth has already been hailed as one of America's major young writers. It is in his willingness to grapple with the complex theme of human responsibility that establishes him as a mature and important artist. Okay, so that's one. The other one, also by Philip Roth, Portnoy's Complaint. Whew. The dust cover was slightly folded on itself, and I'm trying to undo the fold so that I can actually read what it says. Portnoy's Complaint. After Alexander Portnoy. A disorder in which strongly felt ethical and altruistic impulses are perpetually warring with extreme sexual longings, often of a perverse nature. Spielvogel says acts of exhibitionism, voyeurism, fetishism, autoeroticism, and oral coitus are plentiful as a consequence of the patient's morality. However, neither fantasy nor act issues in genuine sexual gratification, but rather in overriding feelings of shame and the dread of retribution, particularly in the form of castration. Spielvogel, The Puzzled Penis, Internationale Zeitschrift für Psychoanalyse, volume 24, page 909. It is believed by Spielvogel that many of the symptoms can be traced to the bonds obtaining in the mother-child relationship. This does not seem like it's a novel. Same author, but does not seem like a novel. let's just poke a little bit deeper, because that dust jacket description was not at all what I was expecting. That's the same text that's on the dust cover. This was printed in 1969, it looks like. Nope, it just dives in, and it is a novel. It is a novel, and the description is providing a definition of the phrase Portnoy's complaint, a disorder in which strongly felt ethical and altruistic impulses are perpetually warring with extreme sexual longings, often of a perverse nature. Interesting. I'm unfamiliar with this novel, clearly, but apparently Al and Alda thought it was pretty good. Let's see. Carol Burnett was one that was requested. And I have it. Alright. Carol Burnett. I don't remember if this is... Oh, this is better than the Dr. Seuss one. Dear Ms. Gibson, Miss Burnett is currently out of town appearing in Las Vegas, so is unable to answer your letter personally. I have been asked to reply and to thank you for thinking of Carol with regards to your interest in furthering reading in your community. When she was a child, Carol absolutely adored Marjorie Rawlings's book, The Yearling. She read it and reread it many times and has made it a favorite of her children as well by reading it to them. Most youngsters will love this book, I am sure. Best wishes for the success of your fine program. Sincerely, The Carol Burnett Show, Ann Terry, Secretary. See? Was that so hard? They're not available. However, she said to respond and let you know that The Yearling, so it's not personally written, but it was still a response. The Yearling by Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings. Not something I'm familiar with, however, most of these have not been. Yeah, and it also wasn't, read my book. But the book that I think is great and has impacted me significantly is the one I just wrote. That was The Lawyer. The scene of Mrs. Rawlings's new novel is inland Florida, the wild and beautiful hammock country which she first made known to American readers in South Moon Under. In the hammock country live a breed of Americans that it is hard to surpass. Proud, self-reliant, industrious, forever struggling against the encroachments of the tropical forest and the raids of wild beasts. Their lives are hard, but full of the experiences that make living worthwhile. It is with the Baxters, one of these hammock country families, that The Yearling is concerned. Hammock, that's what it says. I do not know. 1 year of their lives is spanned in the book, a year brim full of event and incident, of drama, conflict, tragedy, humor, and beauty. The Baxters are three. Penny Baxter, the father, a little man, but a mighty hunter, his stout, hard-working wife and 12-year-old... His stout, hard-working wife and 12-year-old Jody, the yearling, around whom the story centers. But there is a fourth, another yearling who plays quite as poignant a part in the story as the humans. Flag, Jody's pet fawn, taken from the side of its dead mother in one of the many unforgettable scenes in the book. There are other vivid characters in the story, the Foresters, an unruly, bearded, lawless tribe, wise and winning Grandma Hutto, old Slewfoot, the wily bear, whose pursuit and death take on the high courage and daring of the quest for some legendary monster, but the book belongs to the Baxters and to Jody. It is a story that everyone will enjoy, for its people are altogether human and lovable. And beyond the breathless beauty of its physical background and the stirring scenes in which the tale abounds, there is a spiritual meaning which gives the whole narrative a special quality and makes reading it a unique experience. Interesting. I thought that was going to be a horse girl book. I had not noticed that it was a deer. I thought it was going to be a horse book. And it wasn't. I have no idea what hammock country means either. And an internet search was no help. I guess you have to, read Marjorie Kinnan Rawlings's South Moon Under to find out. I wonder if her Wikipedia page would say... They do not do book blurbs like that anymore. It's like, how do you know if you want to buy the book unless you can get a description? Rawlings. Kinnan. Marjorie? Well, what the what? How in the what? I thought I had looked all of them up. Oh. Never mind. The links I have are for the people who wrote the letters, not... I don't have the book links yet. Hammock is a term used in the southeastern United States for stands of trees, usually hardwood, that form an ecological island in a contrasting ecosystem. Shadows, thank you so much for finding that. That is quite useful and helpful, and I appreciate you very much. I wanted to see... Yes, we don't have much time now. But I thought maybe Julia Child? Let's see the chain. Unfortunately, I do not have a list of them in order at present. So finding the one I want is less easy than it would be. But I thought this was a really interesting collection. Like, most of the letters provided actual, titles. A couple of them were just a response saying, sorry, I have nothing to recommend, or so-and-so wasn't available. A couple of them from people you can probably guess, based on some of the names that I read out as I was going through it earlier, simply said the Bible. And I'm not sure if those were honest answers. I suspect in some ways, yes, but I also kind of feel like they were calculated because a lot of the people that said the Bible had a very specific brand that they needed to maintain. And so sharing anything else or mentioning any other book other than the Bible would have been off-brand. And so I kind of feel like maybe it wasn't 100%. Like, anyway. This letterhead is the French chef, and no, an ad break will not be starting soon. Let us prevent that from happening so that we can go quickly into one final one. I'm just gonna make it not start for 15 minutes, and we should be done by then, so. So the letterhead here is the French chef. The Yearling is also a movie with Gregory Peck. I did not know this. Dear Miss Gibson, this is to acknowledge your letter to Julia Child, who is away from her office. I shall hold your letter for Mrs. Child's return early this fall, and you will hear from us at that time. So, again, out of town, but the response was, I'll hold it for her, and she'll respond when she gets back. Did you know Julia Child was a diplomat? She learned to cook in France while she was, I believe, an ambassador's wife. I know she was a diplomat. Dear Miss Gibson, I'm sorry to have taken so long to answer your request of way back in July, but we've just returned from Europe. I haven't had as much time to read the last number of years as I would like, not only because I have so much in my own field of cookery to digest, but because we spend part of the time over in France, where when I'm there I read nothing but French to keep up my language. 3 books I have very much enjoyed in the last year, however, are Beethoven by H.C. Robbins Landon, Macmillan, 1970, and 2 on Wagner, in whom I've taken a re-interest. I dismissed him for a long time until in my latter years I subscribed to the Time Life Wagner records and have read Bernard Shaw's The Perfect Wagnerite and also George Culshaw's The Ring Resounding, describing the details of how they were able to do the special recording of The Ring. You read one of Julia Child's memoirs and it was fascinating? Yeah, her history is quite interesting. I think each of these 3 books give one fascinating insights. The first into Beethoven's life and times. When I went to school, I don't think nearly as much was known about Beethoven as there is now. And most of the photographs one saw were taken in his latter life when he was deaf and cross and old. To find out what an attractive man he really was makes one even more sympathetic, and this aspect of Beethoven is made even more evident by the author's obvious affection for his subject. The author, in addition, gives an extremely interesting account of the life then, and of the court life, and the fact that musicians were hired as though they were cooks. The book makes that era vividly come to life. In the Wagner books, I think both of them certainly give one an idea of what a real genius Wagner was, to have conceived the whole world that exists in The Ring, very much like Balzac's Comédie Humaine, where he also created a whole world. The Bernard Shaw is, of course, a great deal of fun because it's so amusing. John Culshaw's Ring Resounding recounts in a most lively manner the complications of trying to do a really first-class piece of work. I found it a thrilling story, and having read these 2 books, I am infinitely more receptive to the recordings and to the works of Wagner as I listen to them. All good wishes to you on your exhibit. Sincerely yours, Julia Child. I don't have copies of those books from our collection. I just thought it was very interesting in her letter that someone who is so famous for cooking didn't go to like classical literature or things like that. her focus was on books about music, which was unexpected. And I thought it was pretty interesting. Okay. Quickly, because we didn't get it, and I want to... I don't remember who had it on their list, but somebody did. Hey, I could probably find out. Okay. The person who recommended this was Joe Archibald, who had a really long list. He was not famous enough to have a Wikipedia article. He did, however, have a page here on pulp artists. Joseph Stopford Archibald was born... I want to find out why he's... Lots of personal backstory. Illustrated short stories appearing in pulp magazines such as Airplane Stories, Brief Stories, Complete Stories, Dragnet Magazine, Eagles of the Air, Flying Aces, Navy Stories, Skybirds, Sky Raiders, Submarine Stories, 10-Story Book, Underworld Magazine, Warbirds, War Novels, War Stories, and Western Trails. So he was an illustrator working in pulp magazines. He also looks like he was an author. So that's who he was. This was one of his recommendations, and honestly, I'm not at all surprised that this book was recommended by someone. It is, of course, The Call of the Wild. And the reason why I wanted to share this one specifically is because this is one of those limited edition special books. And I just have to show it because it's very interestingly done. This book is covered in green and black plaid fabric. Like, the cover is fabric. Like, fabric that you would make a shirt out of. Which has always just sort of called to me because it's unique and interesting. The Call of the Wild by Jack London. With an introduction by Pierre Burton and illustrations by Henry Varnum Poor. Printed for the members of the Limited Editions Club at the Ward Ritchie Press in Los Angeles, 1960. It is August of 1897, and the rubbled mountainside is specked with the struggling figures of men moving insect fashion among the huge boulders and jutting scarps that block their passage. Directly above them, flashing against the frost-blue sky, there hangs a glacier of bottle green, holding a lake of ice water within it. Directly ahead of them, like a nick in a razor, is that tiny notch in the mountain wall which all the world knows is the Chilkoot Pass, or as the Chilkoot Pass. The men, bowed down by their packs, crawling and clawing their way upwards, seek that notch as a moth seeks a flame. Beyond that notch is a lake, and beyond that lake a canyon, and beyond that canyon there are rapids, and beyond the rapids a river. The river is the highway to riches, to adventure, to romance, and to fulfillment, for the river leads to the Klondike. You'd 100% make a shirt out of green and black plaid? Well, like, I would wear this shirt, but instead of being a shirt, in this case, It is the cover material. And not just that, but also the box. I forget what the name of the box is. It has a specific name. But anyway, I just think it's always kind of been neat to me that ever since I saw it, I wanted to share it on stream, and I just finally got one. I finally got a stream where it was appropriate to bring on. Anyway, that is where we're going to need to leave it today. Whew. For the first one back after vacation, that was pretty good. Thank you all so very much for joining me. I have been your host, of course, at Rogan27. What in the heck is up with my credits? There! I have been your host. Thank you to Hannah for being here and modding. Thank you, Hannah and Puddleglum, for the resubscriptions. Eric for the raid. Sadacliff for the follow. Shadows for the streak. I need to fix that so it gets a title. And of course, the music has been provided by Lo-Fi Girl. I added in the follows, or the streaks, but apparently I didn't get the title in there. We'll have to fix that. Anyway, next week, the plan is to focus on air crash investigation. I hope. I'm trying to track down a box that is very important to covering that topic, and I presently have not been able to figure out where it's at. So hopefully by next week we've located it and I can move forward. But if not, that'll get delayed and we'll do something else next week. But yeah, basically aircraft CSI. It's I find the topic really interesting, and we have a pretty substantial collection related to that topic. So I'm excited to give it a go. Let's head on over to Stephen Joy's. It's been a couple weeks, and definitely worth rating. And so you should come on over with me and request a tiny hat. Stephen has a wonderful community that includes multiple librarians. So, yeah, I encourage you to join. And we will pop on over there. Hopefully this was interesting for you. It was pretty cool, at least by my perspective. So hopefully I'll see all of you again soon. Until I do, keep exploring history.